History is full of twists and turns. But what if there's more to the story? I'm James Mackay, and on History Unfiltered, we dig deep into the moments that change the world, but often don't get told as they should. History is often told from a single perspective, but what if there's more to the story? Welcome to History Unfiltered. Hello and welcome to History Unfiltered, the podcast where we dig deeper into the untold stories of the past, question the mainstream narratives, and hopefully have a little bit of fun along the way. Welcome to Episode 3, the truth behind Cleopatra, queen, lover, or politician. The truth may shock you. I'm James Mackay, and today we're diving into the life of one of history's most iconic women, Cleopatra VII, the last Ptolemaic active ruler of the Egyptian Empire. She's known as a queen, a lover, and a politician. But how much of what we know is actually true? Was she truly a seductress, a mastermind politician, or something more complex? Let's find out together. Before we jump right in, let's take a moment to think about how Cleopatra is often portrayed in popular culture. From Elizabeth Taylor's legendary portrayal in the 1963 film Cleopatra, to the countless modern takes of her as a femme fatale. Cleopatra's image has been moulded and shaped by history and Hollywood alike. But was that the real Cleopatra, or is her legacy far more nuanced? From doing a little bit of research, it's become clear that there's so much about Cleopatra that's been romanticised and mythologised over the centuries. We've often focused on her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Cleopatra was much more than just a seductress. She was a skilled diplomat, a brilliant strategist, and a ruler who fought for the survival of Egypt at one of its most crucial junctures. So let's start with the basics. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC, and by the age of 18 she was ruling Egypt alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. But what's often left out of the story is how she became the sole ruler of Egypt after a tumultuous rise to power. It wasn't just handed to her, she had to fight for it. The Ptolemaic dynasty, which Cleopatra belonged to, wasn't Egyptian by origin. They were Greek Macedonian rulers who had taken over after Alexander the Great's death. Cleopatra, however, made a point to embrace Egyptian culture. She spoke the Egyptian language, which, unlike her predecessors, was a huge statement, but her reign was far from peaceful. In fact, Cleopatra's relationship with her brother Ptolemy XIII quickly turned sour. After her father's death, Cleopatra was supposed to rule alongside him, but political infighting soon escalated. She was exiled from Egypt and her brother's advisors took control of the throne. What happened next? Enter Julius Caesar. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, needed to regain the throne, and rather than relying solely on her royal bloodline, she decided to use her wits and political acumen. This is where history gets really interesting. She had herself smuggled into Caesar's camp in a rug, and upon meeting him, she charmed the Roman general into supporting her claim to the throne. This wasn't just about romance, it was about survival and politics. But let's pause for a moment. Many people focus on the romance between Cleopatra and Julius Caesar, but what's often overlooked is that their relationship was deeply political. Yes, they had a son together, Caesarion, but Cleopatra wasn't playing the role of Caesar's lover. She was playing a far more strategic role, one that secured her throne and the future of Egypt. And what's fascinating is how Caesar also saw her as an ally in his own quest for power. After Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, Cleopatra's political manoeuvring didn't stop there. She found herself once again facing a Roman power struggle, but this time with Mark Antony. The relationship between Cleopatra and Antony is well known, but again, it's often reduced to a tragic love story. In reality, it was another calculated political alliance. Antony was part of the Second Triumvirate, ruling Rome alongside Octavian and Lepidus. His alliance with Cleopatra was politically significant. Egypt was wealthy and its resources could provide Antony with the military and financial backing he needed in order to triumph in his struggle for power against Octavian. This wasn't just a personal affair, It was a critical move in Antony's campaign to solidify his position in Rome. What's more, Cleopatra's relationship with Antony was part of a broader strategy to protect Egypt from the expanding power of Rome. They even had 3 children together, which solidified their political alliance, but we all know how that story ends. Antony and Cleopatra's defeat by Octavian in the Battle of Actium in 31 BC led to their eventual suicides, marking the end of the Ptolemaic rule in Egypt. Cleopatra's death wasn't just the end of a personal saga, it marked the end of an era for Egypt. After her death, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, and the rule of the last Ptolemaic ruler was over. What's tragic is that Cleopatra was so much more than her relationships with Caesar and Antony. She was a ruler who had to navigate the treacherous waters of Roman politics, a woman who fought for her kingdom's survival until the very end. So when we look at Cleopatra today, it's important to look beyond the seductive image that she's often given. She wasn't just a lover, a queen, or a political pawn. She was a ruler, a politician, and a woman who used every tool at her disposal to protect Egypt in a time when the empire was falling into Roman hands. That's the real Cleopatra, an incredible political figure who navigated treacherous waters to secure her throne and protect her people. Her image of a lover has often been overstated, while her political savvy and strategic brilliance are often downplayed. Cleopatra was a master of political strategy, and her reign, well marked by personal relationships with powerful men, was centred around Egypt's survival in a world dominated by Rome. She was not just a woman in a man's world, she was a queen who knew how to play the game. That being said, in researching for this particular episode, I did find out some very, very interesting and juicy things about Cleopatra. In fact, Cleopatra's path to power was marked by quite strategic and ruthless actions. To solidify her rule of Egypt, she actually married 2 of her younger brothers, Ptolemy XIII and Ptolemy XIV, which actually was customary in Egyptian royal tradition at that time. However, these marriages were more than just mere formalities. They were integral to her political strategy, and after the death of Ptolemy XIII, Cleopatra married her 12-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIV. But this union was short-lived. Cleopatra likely had him murdered to eliminate any potential rival to her authority, ensuring that her son Caesarion could eventually be named co-regent. Moreover, Cleopatra's family dynamics were complex and often deadly. She had a younger sister, Arsinoe IV, who initially posed a threat to her reign. After being captured by Julius Caesar, Arsinoe was exiled to the temple of Artemis in Euphus. However, Cleopatra, viewing her as a continued threat, persuaded Mark Antony to have her executed, an act that scandalised Rome due to the temple's status as a sanctuary. These actions, I think, highlight Cleopatra's unwavering commitment to maintaining her grip on power, even at the expense of her own family. In the cutthroat world of ancient Egyptian politics, such measures were not uncommon, but I think they do underscore the lengths to which Cleopatra is willing to go in order to secure her position as ruler of Egypt. Before we wrap up, let's take a moment to consider something that might surprise many listeners. Cleopatra's intelligence wasn't just limited to political strategy. She was a polyglot, fluent in multiple languages, including Egyptian, which actually was quite unusual for a Ptolemaic ruler. In fact, she was the first in her dynasty to embrace Egyptian culture fully. This wasn't just about speaking the language, it was about understanding the pulse of the people she ruled. Cleopatra was known to have an extensive education in philosophy, mathematics, and astronomy. But what's more fascinating is her ability to innovate politically. Cleopatra is said to have introduced economic reforms that helped stabilise Egypt's economy, ensuring that the country wasn't just a puppet of Rome, but a vital power in its own right. Her efforts to create alliances with key Roman figures were part of a bigger vision, one where Egypt could stand strong amidst the growing influence of Rome. And let's not forget Cleopatra's legacy beyond her death. Despite the fall of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra's influence didn't just end with her. Her son Caesarion, though never able to claim the throne, symbolised a potential future for Egypt that was more independent from Rome, a future that tragically never came to pass. So when we talk about Cleopatra, We're not just talking about a woman who used beauty and charm to manipulate powerful men. We're talking about a woman who used every tool at her disposal, her intellect, her political insight, and yes, her ability to form complex alliances, all to protect her kingdom. She isn't just a queen in the traditional sense. She was a visionary, and her ambitions were as grand as the empire she sought to preserve. I guess then Cleopatra was a ruler whose story still resonates with us because she wasn't content with simply being a ruler in a male-dominated world. She built an empire that even after her death sparks stories, myths, and debates that continue to captivate us today. Well, there you have it, the truth behind Cleopatra, queen, lover, or politician. The answer is all of the above and more. Cleopatra remains one of the most fascinating figures in history, and her legacy is much more complex than the myths that have surrounded her. From her political manoeuvres to her diplomatic alliances, Cleopatra's reign was marked by an incredible combination of intellect, strategy, and courage. And I guess it's always a reminder that history isn't as simple as the headlines make it out to be. There's so much more beneath the surface, and Cleopatra's life and times is a perfect example of that. Thank you everyone for tuning in to History Unfiltered. We hope you've enjoyed our deep dive into the truth behind Cleopatra and her complex legacy. We'll be back next week with more untold stories and hidden truths. Until then, remember, history is never just black and white. It's a story that's still being written. Join us next week on History Unfiltered.